Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Stanton. I'm a technical marketing architect for VMware Tanzu Hub. I'm going to give you a quick demo of Tanzu Hub. Before I dive in, though, I just wanted to quickly kind of level set. First of all, talk about what Tanzu Hub is and what Tanzu Hub isn't. So first of all, unlike the Tanzu Intelligent Services, Tanzu Hub is not a product. It's actually a platform. It's the platform upon which all the Tanzu Intelligent Services run. So while it does, really the idea behind the platform is we're going to provide you with this common platform for application delivery, multi-cloud management, and we're going to do this all from a single control plane powered by our backend graph data store. So it's really the glue that binds together all of those Tanzu Intelligent Services. And while it does have its standard features of its own, and I'll show you some of these here in the demo, the real value of Hub is more than just the features that it brings. It's really the value that comes when you're able to get this more complete visibility across all of your environments with inputs from each of those Tanzu Intelligent Services. So being able to gain insights from your governance, your cost, performance, and even other characteristics for those cloud services across your environments. So let's go ahead and dive into this. I'm going to do a really quick demo, and then we'll talk through some of the key features here. So the first thing you see when you log into Tanzu Hub is this homepage summary dashboard. This gives you a summary view of all of your cloud resources, as well as summary information for each of the Tanzu Intelligent Services that you're using. So if we take a look at this dashboard up on the top left here, I can see all of my cloud accounts that have been entered into Tanzu Hub. You can think of these as data sources where Tanzu Hub can discover these resources within the security context of these accounts that you've provided. Today, we support AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. We also have a view of your top 5 service instances across all of your cloud environments. You can see here. As well, we'll provide you with a graph that shows you how your consumption of those services is trending over time, which can be helpful for maybe identifying any anomalies or any potential trends that might be occurring. This is a great example. If I look at this monthly view here, I can see a pretty significant uptick in Kubernetes workloads, something I might want to look into a little bit further there. Next, we have our active insights tile. So this is our summary information that's coming from Tanzu Insights. So here I get a breakdown over the last 48 hours of all of my active insights broken out by criticality. And of course, I can drill into these deeper once I get into the Tanzu Insights service.
Justin,
moving on here, we've got, go ahead.
I got a quick question for you, buddy. So seeing this, it looks kind of familiar to a previous product. So I have to ask, is this just a name change from ARIA Hub to Tanzu Hub?
Yes, in fact, it is. There's actually a lot more features coming with the product and the platform, but you are correct. If you're familiar with ARIA Hub, this is the new version of it.
Okay, just making sure we're level set. Appreciate it.
Yeah, while we have the pause, another question. Now that we understand that this is a platform and not a product, what do I do to get access to it? I mean, what level of licensing, if it's not a product? How do I buy it?
Yeah, great question. And thank you for asking that, actually. You're absolutely right. You can't actually go out and buy this today. You can get this one of two ways. So we do provide this in a free tier version. And I'll talk about the differences of that as I'm demoing this. That's available to download today, and we can provide that for you after the session. The other way that you get this is through entitlements, either through guardrails or insights or cost or any of the other intelligent services that are part of the Tanzu Intelligent Services suite. So if you purchased guardrails, you purchased cloud health, you purchased insights, you would then get access to Tanzu Hub.
Okay, so this becomes my dashboard for all things basically intelligence. So if I get if I purchase one of those individual products, I inherently get the dashboard.
That's right, exactly correct. And since we called it out, I'll just come back here for a second. So under my accounts, you'll see that we've got quite a few cloud accounts that we've added. The one distinction with the free tier of Tanzu Hub is I can only add up to 2 accounts, but it's a great opportunity to kind of kick the tires, start testing it out, and then you can add any of the entitlements from guardrails, cloud health, insights, or transformer to then get that full access and we'll add additional accounts within Hub. Great. Any more questions? Okay. So we talked about the Active Insights tile. The next tile here we have is our governance summary. So this is your summary of Guardrail's findings. We can see all of our open findings as well as an indication of how we're trending over the last 7 days. We can see a breakdown of those findings as in terms of criticality, and then also a breakdown of those findings in terms of the different finding types. So whether it's a configuration drift, maybe we've got some security violations, threats, vulnerabilities, or errors. From here, I can drill in even further by clicking on that summary information and going into Guardrails to do those details. Next, we have our cost information. So here I get a summary of all of my cost info. I can see projected costs for the month across all of my cloud accounts. And this is also going to show me how I'm trending month over month right here. And then I can see what any potential savings I might realize if I took advantage of any of the recommended cost optimizations from Tanzu Cloud Health. That number is there for me. And then we can also see our costs from a breakdown by provider. So today we can support AWS and Azure with support for this view coming for Google Cloud. So we don't have that yet, but it is coming very soon. But it's nice to be able to see that breakdown by provider per month. And then next we have my applications. So you can think of applications in Tanzu Hub as an organizational unit, really that contains one or more resources that you've defined for the purposes of management and reporting. So you'll see here, I've got some business applications that I've modeled out. I've saved those in Tanzu Hub already. But then you'll see I've also got this list of potential applications. So what Tanzu Hub is doing is actively discovering new relationships between resources and actively discovering new potential applications and then presenting them to me. And it's doing this because of that backend graph data store, which is really, really good at understanding relationships. So it's looking at things like naming conventions, properties of the objects. It's looking at tag information. It's even looking at functional relationships. So looking at EC2 instances that might be talking to a load balancer. And then it's forming these relationships and putting them together in proposed application models that you can then decide, yeah, you know what, that looks good. That is actually an application that I want to start monitoring. I'm going to go ahead and curate that a little further, and then I can save that as a business application. So that's the potential applications piece. Next, we have the resources by region view. So this is a pretty cool feature. This shows me kind of a distributed view of where all of my cloud services and resources are running across providers and also across the globe. So I can come in here and I can hover over this map view and I can see kind of at a glance what's running in these different regions. I can also filter this view. So maybe I want to see just all of my AWS regions that I have services running today. And I can zoom out on that and hover over it well. And then likewise, I can filter this down to a specific region also. So maybe I wanted to see all of my resources that are running within the US West AWS region. I can see that view here. And it also shows me a summary of all the service instances that I have running there, as well as that top 5 service list as well. Next, we have our modern infrastructure. So this really gives you a footprint from a Kubernetes perspective. You can see the total number of Kubernetes clusters. I can see all of the cluster resources over here. And then as well, I can see a breakdown by cluster providers. Now, Kubernetes clusters can be discovered and onboarded automatically from each of the cloud providers. But you can also attach clusters manually as what's called a self-managed cluster. And so we support this by allowing you to install our Tanzu Hub collector agent onto that target cluster, and then you can bring that in here as well. So you could say bring in a cluster that might be running on-prem or in a data center somewhere as well. Okay, so that's our summary dashboard. With the time we have left, I want to show you just one of the key features of the platform, and it's really this idea of multi-cloud visibility, being able to explore and search for resources across all of your cloud environments. And we provide a number of ways to do this. So I mentioned that we have that graph data store. Of course, for more complex queries, we can build out a GraphQL query, and I'll show you what those look like in a minute. But for somebody who's new or coming into the platform and just wants to be able to explore what might be out there, we provide this inventory view. So what you have here is a list of all of the inventory services and resources across all of those cloud providers and environments. And I can come through here and explore this further if I want. And I can also filter this down either by providers, whether it's a cloud provider or a particular account within that cloud provider. I can also filter it by services if I want to look for a particular service across one of those hyperscalers, or even by a particular region if I want to see what's running within, say, a particular region in the US or within Europe, for example. So just to show you a really quick example of this, let's say that I wanted to see, all EKS clusters that I might have running out there in AWS. I simply apply that service filter for EKS, and I see here my results. So I've got some EKS clusters running. I see I have a resource count of 6. If I click on this, it takes me to our search results page. And so here I can see, all the results that are matching my search criteria. But even more interesting, I can see the GraphQL query that was generated on my behalf to produce these search results. So it's already beginning to show me the syntax for that GraphQL query. I can edit this query, and I can even save this off if it's a query that I find I might be using on a more regular basis. So we've got some great support there for GraphQL. In addition to the saved queries, I also have access to a lot of great support in terms of how to build out this graph query syntax. We've got examples of the different types of searches you can do, as well as the different types of searches within each cloud provider. So a lot of great resources there to help you kind of put together more complex GraphQL queries. But again, once I have kind of formulated my search criteria, I'm presented with this search results page. One of the cool things that it has right away is when I click on a particular resource, so for example, I've clicked on this particular cluster, I can see all resources that are related to that object. So in this case, we've got a Kubernetes cluster. So of course, I'm going to see things like the deployments. I've got all of the namespaces here, some subnets, right? And so on and so forth. I can see my pods, node information, right? Jobs. And just as I clicked on that cluster resource, I can click on any one of these resources, for instance, a subnet, right? And as I do that, I'm going to see another layer of relationships get overlaid into my view. And I can continue to do this by clicking on additional objects in my view, right? So what happens is it starts building out this very complex relationship map for me. So I can begin to understand, how my services are interrelated.
Quick question for you, Justin. Well, 2 quick questions. One, I noticed that you had an export option, and presumably there's a way that we can take this information out as JSON and actually move it to another format. So we want to visualize it a different way. So how do we get data in and out? And then the second piece would be point in time, and what's in inventory in this view. Can we say, I need this particular set of nodes, these particular set of relationships, but I want to see how they've changed over time, or like at a point in time? Is there any way that we can look at it other than just like right now?
We don't have the capability to do a point in time view today. That's actually an interesting idea, though, and certainly something we can get back to our product team. But that capability is not available today. In terms of how data gets in and out, so collectively, we're talking to each of the cloud provider services. We're talking to AWS CloudWatch, for instance. We're pulling in all that data. We're talking to the Kubernetes services. We're talking to those providers as well. We have, in the Kubernetes example, we have that hub collector agent, which is running on there, which is pulling this information in, right? And then Graph is determining all of these great relationships for me, because that's what it's really, really good at. I don't have an ability today that I'm aware of to be able to export this in any format. But again, that's an interesting feature as well that we could consider for future versions of the product.
Yeah, I mean, even doing the querying, and also thank you for including how to do graph queries in the UI, because most people get to try their first graph query and then they realize that they barely knew SQL, let alone trying to understand the concept of graph. So it's like a lot of operators I find really struggle with this and like grabbing Grafana if we didn't come from a background of building queries. So thank you, please, for including education along with the product. But yeah, the problem I see with it really is more if I've got, let's say I'm a large provider of drug manufacturing, and rhymes with Merck, and let's say I've got thousands of nodes and I've got hundreds of vCenters. A graph visualization is impossible to navigate, because the moment you click on one thing, you see 4,000, octopus tendons that go out all over the place. So that's why like getting data out via the API is ideal for the really large environments, because they want to just sort of tune what they pull rather than try and visualize it.
Yeah, great point. And, that's actually a really great point about API access. So, one thing that I do want to emphasize too is, this is really designed for developers, by developers. And so everything that I can do within the UI is also available via API. And we've actually got some great resources under developer resources to help you with that as well, in terms of documentation, fully documented schema, and so on and so forth. But to get back to what you were saying too, that's where the power of the GraphQL query engine comes into play as well, because I can get, certainly these relationship map views can get blown out and get, very, very complex very, very quickly. I can really begin to start narrowing down my results using more complex GraphQL queries, right? And like you, I actually love this feature in the product because it is teaching me that syntax. And so as I'm taking actions within the UI, it's generating more simpler queries for me on my behalf. So, in addition to that, like I said, we've got some great resources to really help you put together those more complex queries where you can get very, very precise relationship data. And the other thing I'll say about GraphQL in particular, and the way that we have this set up is, traditionally, if you wanted to get information about a resource and you were looking for cost and for performance, maybe governance information, hey, are there any, settings drifts for that particular object? I had to go to separate tools to do all this. I might have to do RESTful API calls, right? Parse all that information, parse those payloads to try to get the information I want. What I love about GraphQL is I can provide one query and get all of that information back for that object with one response, right? So I can get all that cost, I can get the governance, I can get the insights, all that information for me back in one response.
On that thing, is there a way that you can actually then interact with that object through the other parts of the platform, like where you could right click and manage this in vCenter, or any other way to interact with that, like as an operational management?
Not today outside of the intelligent services. So I can interact with these objects in the context of Tanzu Intelligent Services. But outside of that, no, not today.
Can I also make note on the homepage as well? There's that one screen there, and it says modern infrastructure. And I feel so bad for all the people that don't get in that little box because womp womp, we're not modern. VMware called themselves non-modern. That's very naughty.
So a question on kind of the big picture, kind of zooming back out. I'm looking back at the golden path slide that you folks shared earlier in the overview. Where is this and the previous presentation in Transformer? Where does this fall along that golden path?
That's a great question. I can certainly talk to Hub. Hub absolutely falls into that optimized pillar. So the final O of DOO. I don't know, Matt, do you want to speak to Transformer?
Yeah, so Keith, so on the question, so I think Rachna laid it out, right? The develop, operate, and optimize. This whole Tanzu Intelligent Services suite that includes Hub, that includes Transformer, that includes the other two presentations coming up, fall into that optimized pillar of your workloads. How do you migrate, for example? How do you visualize? How do you get insights? How do you set guardrails? So it's part of that suite of products, if you will. Then there is a developer portal. We won't cover that today. Is how do you build the application itself? So this is what Justin just talked about. Is kind of the overarching view of everything that is discovered from Tanzu Intelligent Services. That includes Hub, and then the rest of the products like how Transformer, Insights, and Guardrails will follow suit from there.
Yeah. So just some active feedback. What confuses me when it comes to the Tanzu brand. I love the vision around the platform engineering team, develop, operate, optimize. I'm looking at a platform called, and that I think that makes it even more challenging, a platform called VMware Tanzu Hub. And this is mainly focused on that optimized part of the journey and not the overall Tanzu vision. So that's, that kind of initiated my confusion, being introduced to this new, to think, oh, this is all things Tanzu Hub is all things Tanzu, but it's specifically focused on the optimized part of the journey. Just some active feedback.
Yeah, fair enough. Justin, maybe, I don't know if Rachna, if you want to talk about how we, or is it a roadmap item of how we kind of bring in?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to add. So the way we've split it to kind of showcase the platform is that we have Tanzu application platform, Tanzu application service that has the components for the golden paths to production or to be able to operate and to automate your operations at application runtime. It's a roadmap item to include and integrate with the Hub. And, we can definitely have separate presentations on the Tanzu application platform as well as Tanzu application services as a separate area.
Okay.
We were focusing on Tanzu Intelligent Services. And again, to answer your question, some of those are roadmap items that will all sort of, the goal is to have them all be part of our hub platform.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the key things is basically, Keith, so we want to basically have this optimization on the day when people are developing as well. So it's basically when they're developing, it's not something that's reactive to use these intelligence services, but to do it, to do the security, to do the scale, to do the cost as the developers are developing those applications. So it'll be at the beginning as well, not after. So that's the goal. So basically, let's go to guardrails with Ty, and we'll start with the next aspect of Tanzu Intelligent Services.